Well, Bob, from what we can see now, things are looking a little better than we expected on the East Coast.
You're absolutely right, and we talked about that yesterday. If the storm were to stay a little bit further offshore, say 60 miles, and that's pretty much what it's doing right now, they're not going to see the core of the system, the 130, 145 to 60 mile an hour gust at time too, so that's good news. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's happening here as far as the latest goes for us. The tower cam, you can see we have a pretty nice day for the most part. We had one brief shower activity move on through, a little feeder band make its way through, but all in all, not too bad this evening. Things have been pretty calm here considering what's going on the East Coast, and it made for a nice sunset, didn't it, from our tower cam? And the weather headlines still read like this. So we are still under a tropical storm watch, but we are not anticipating tropical storm force winds sustained here in Sarasota and Manatee counties. In fact, to give you a little heads up, the Charlotte County is no longer in the tropical storm watch. They've dropped that now. When I say they, the National Weather Service has, as well as Lee County. So Fort Myers no longer in the watch. And you get a sense of what's happening right now is because even the Keys, the tropical storm warning that had been in place, is also expired now and no longer up there for them. Hardee and Highlands County, still there's that chance, although this is lessening somewhat for those tropical storm force winds to be sustained for a long duration. Feeder bands could still bring some strong gusty winds here. Don't get me wrong, and we're not done yet here, but we're still going to see some of these banding features make their way over. Orlando's been getting hit hard through this evening. These storms have been trying to make it all the way over to us, but they haven't had much success at this point. But as the atmosphere moistens up a bit, they'll have a better chance to wrap all the way around and feed back into the storm. So that's the reason why we call them feeder bands. They kind of feed the moisture back into it because it needs it as the result of the low pressure that is at the center. There's been this persistent area right there in the north end of the eye itself that's not been moving much at all. And you can see it moving. The general motion has been off toward the northwest with some of those bands moving on in to near Fort Pierce. We just talked to meteorologist Josh Stone, who's right there at Fort Pierce. And these are actual little storm trackers that have been going on there. And we'll zero on this one right near Fort Pierce. We saw Josh get that brief wind gust there. That was probably right around 50 miles an hour. This one reported at just before 9:30, reporting a wind gust up to 51 miles an hour. So we are getting tropical storm force winds here. But it could be a lot worse, and it could have been a lot worse for folks in Fort Lauderdale as well as into West Palm Beach. If this were just over another 30 miles to the west, they would have been seeing that core of the strongest winds. Now, it still has about 100 miles to go to where it may be near Cape Canaveral, which will also possibly, I think they'll see the hurricane force winds there in the next 5 hours or so. And then for us, we're still under the watch. You can see Hillsborough, Pinellas, Manatee, Sarasota, and also DeSoto counties under again, a tropical storm watch, meaning there's a possibility of getting some tropical force winds, but not definite at this point. And there are changing some watches and warnings on the East Coast right now. That's why you see that flashing just off shore of Fort Lauderdale. For us, 77, some light rain falling right now. Dew point at 77. North winds at 12. Now, those winds will pick up a little bit more so as the storm increases and moves off toward the northwest. The high today was 89, and that's 2 degrees above average. Here's a look at what we look at normally as this dry air, and you can see it kind of retreating away from the storm right now, and that's allowing this to move in. This actually is causing this dry air to move away. So when they get so big, they can actually dictate what's happening out ahead of them in the mid to upper levels of the atmosphere. And this is interesting too. Another storm, NICOLE, out there in the Atlantic right now. This is the color enhanced satellite imagery, and I feel for these people here in the Bahamas, especially at Freeport and Grand Bahama. I think that's going to be ending up to be the worst hit of all the islands as far as conditions go. They were under that eye for about 3 hours for the most part. Wind gusts up to 160, 130 mile an hour winds. There's the forecast path and track. It looks like it keeps it off the coast of Florida, so never making landfall, and then coming back around, though, and could have another try at it on Tuesday of next week as a tropical storm, though. No rough weather anticipated in terms of hurricane activity with that. As far as our winds go, gusts, I mentioned, could be strong throughout the day on Friday with some of the bands that come through, but generally we're looking at northwest winds anywhere from 20 to 25 miles an hour, possibly as high as 30, but for the most part, the tropical storm force winds will not be around and they will not be sustained. As far as the tropical storm force winds, Highlands County will certainly get some, and also Polk County, and then off to the northeast it goes, and the possibility of that core coming ashore near Cape Canaveral and Daytona Beach is a real possibility for them, and that could cause the most damage in terms of across the state. The forecast cone, again, is the reason why it comes back. You see most of the models agree that it's going to loop and come back toward Florida. This is Nicole out there, and it's a Category 2 hurricane, and it does a loop as well. And eventually, they're not really sure where it's going to be in about 5 days from now. But for one thing we know, it's not going to have an impact on any land area anytime soon. So very active here in October, and I would not be surprised to see a couple of more storms form before it's all over by November 30th. Boating tomorrow, not advised, obviously. Chance for showers on Saturday, very light, 30%. But windy conditions for Friday, looking much better on Monday and Tuesday. Then we'll have to watch again for a return of what could be some tropical weather.